Standing before a funerary urn, the young man shares that he has finally graduated. He was the valedictorian at Seoul University and promises he'll find Yuri to bring her back. With a grim look, he vows to make those responsible suffer for what they've done. This leads someone to ask him why he lives that way, with no friends or a love life, just studying. The young man replies that it's the only way for him to get his revenge. In the past, his father was protesting the unfair seizure of their land. The Going group was responsible for ruining his family's life, which is why he seeks power. Fortunately, in South Korea, there was a group with more power than them, and that group was the politicians. Even knowing it's not easy to become a politician, he didn't care about the challenges. His mind was focused only on his parents and his missing brother. On the day he went to say his goodbyes to them, something strange happened. Red petals began to float in front of him, as if they were trying to say something. And it was that night that he had a very strange dream. In the dream, two men were talking about how Miss Song Haejin was better than Do-jun. One of them smiles mischievously, thinking about the next general election. At that moment, one of them hands a gift to Director Oh, and the protagonist recognizes that voice. The man who gave the gift is the regional chairman, Baek Young-sik. The one who accepts the gift with a smile is Director Oh Dong-sik. Suddenly, his vision becomes clear, and he realizes he's in the regional committee office. On the desk, he sees a yellow envelope with his name, Kang Da-jun. Inside the dream, he sees the envelope with his name trembling strangely. Then the document is completely shredded, and the protagonist finds it absurd. With this bizarre scene in his mind, the young man finally wakes up, very startled. Sitting on the bed, he takes a deep breath, trying to calm down after that horrible nightmare. Then he throws himself back on the mattress, wondering what kind of unlucky dream that was. Soon after, Do-jun grabs a hairdryer to start getting ready for his day. While drying his hair, he still thinks that the dream was a bad omen. Later, the young man goes to the regional committee of the Korea Advanced Party in the city of Anyang. Arriving there, the protagonist enters the office all dressed up in a suit and tie. His coworkers are surprised and happy to see that Do-jun has already arrived. An older woman compliments his appearance and even invites him to go out with her daughter. With a smile, the young man declines, saying he's not interested as he's been working there for 10 years. He remembers that in the beginning, everyone found it strange for a student without parents to be helping at the office. But their attitude changed when he got into the College of Political Science and Diplomacy. At just 27 years old, the young man already has experience in several major elections. Walking down the committee's hallway, he runs into one of his coworkers. His friend, named Hansu, is surprised to see the protagonist arrive so early. Right after, Hansu whispers that he heard a rumor about Chairman Baek Young-sik. He seems worried because he knows that things there aren't decided by skill alone. But Do-jun reassures him, saying his connections aren't weak, as he fought 10 years for them. Hansu then asks if this favored candidate has a better vision, and Do-jun says he doesn't know. With that, his friend gets excited, saying that if the protagonist is confident, they'll win either way. At that moment, a colleague informs them that the registration deadline is from next Monday to Wednesday. The man approaching is Oh Dong-sik, the office director, who calls him the hero of the city. The young man asks him not to exaggerate, but the director insists, saying he's just stating the obvious. Do-jun then retorts that if that were true, they would have won all the previous elections. The office director falls silent for a moment, just observing the young man's reaction. Dong-sik then says he believes that if he becomes the youth chairman, this place will become more vibrant. The protagonist gives an awkward smile and comments that the elders are just wishing him good luck. The truth is, he wants this position because it's a stepping stone for a politician to grow in the party. On top of everything, he can expand his network, becoming a symbol of innovation. The director then jokes that if the young man doesn't get married in 10 years, he'll introduce him to his daughter. Hyunsu overhears the conversation and says that's like a jinx, because Do-jun will surely be married by then. While the two joke about his future, the protagonist remains silent with a serious look. He then turns to the director and asks if he knows who the other person running is. The unexpected question catches the director by surprise and he looks shocked. Stuttering, Dong-sik replies that he couldn't say, and the young man notices his nervousness. Do-jun reflects that he has many connections and hasn't heard any rumors about other candidates. The director's strange reaction makes the young man think that perhaps his nightmare wasn't just a simple dream. Later that same night, the scene shifts to a quiet subway station. At the bar, Heinzu slams his glass of beer on the table and promises he'll win for him. The protagonist thanks him, but his friend notices he's strangely worried about it. Do-jun takes a sip and explains that his concern isn't about the person, but about the situation. Heinzu then asks if he's afraid his opponent won't play fair in this contest. With a determined look, the young man confirms that is exactly his concern. His friend doesn't understand how they could beat him since he has control over the party officials. The young man explains that you shouldn't trust appearances because people lie all the time. He then asks if his friend really thinks people do this for the good of the city. The young man starts listing everyone's interests, like parking lots and wellness facilities. Therefore, if someone shows up offering more benefits, they have no reason to support him. His colleague is shocked, but Do-jun explains because of these 10 years that he is recognized. Hyunsu says that if it were him, he would have become an aide to a famous politician instead of working so hard. The protagonist gives a sarcastic smile and asks if he thinks he could get an easy nomination. He explains that it would take about 7 years as an aide, and for him, that's far too long. His friend calculates that in 7 years he'd be in his early 30s, and Do-jun confirms he knows. Suddenly, it clicks for Hyunsu, and he starts to understand his friend's real plan. Do-jun confirms that his goal is to become the youth chairman to aim for the next general election. That's why the fact that Baek Young-sik is trying to put someone else in his way bothers him so much. With a plan in mind, the protagonist calls his friend Hyunsu, who answers a bit nervously. Then the young man asks him to get a high-quality camera to put his plan into action. The protagonist reflects that dreams usually fade with time, but that one stayed in his mind. At the office, a young woman named Song Haejin introduces herself as the new candidate for the election. Upon hearing that name, Do-jun is in shock, as it was the same one he heard in his nightmare. The girl gives a spirited speech and promises to dedicate herself to the party while the others applaud. With a smile on her face, the new candidate faces her future coworkers. Then Haijin walks confidently through the office, drawing the attention of everyone there. She approaches the protagonist and asks if he is Kang Dojin. Then the young woman extends her hand and proposes that they compete fairly and accept the outcome. The young man is silent for a moment, just observing his new rival. With a handshake, he agrees to the girl's proposal for a clean competition. After that, the candidate says goodbye to everyone and leaves the committee office. Heinsu whispers that looks are very important in politics, and the girl is quite pretty. Do-jun observes one of the men who applauded the young woman and tells everyone to get back to work. The young man notices that the same man who was cheering for her before now seems confused and lost. His friend offers to check the party's membership list, but the protagonist declines. He explains that they shouldn't raise suspicion and need to act as if they're just being careful. With a nod, Heinsu understands the plan and agrees to follow his orders. Do-jun imagines that Haijin went to meet with Chairman Baek and wonders where she came from. In another room, an older man comments to the girl that she has grown up very well. Sitting on the sofa, the young woman replies that it's been about 5 years since they last saw each other. Sipping his coffee, the older man asks about the chairman to see if he's doing well. With a smile on his face, he asks the girl about the meeting and if she feels capable of beating him. Haijin then replies that Mr. Kang Do-jun doesn't seem like an easy opponent to defeat. Bak Youngsik agrees and says it's not easy for anyone to take him down in the city of Anyang. The young woman seems worried, but the chairman says he can't let his friend's daughter fail. He reassures her and tells her not to worry and just to try her absolute best. With a serious look, the older man says that if she keeps trying, she'll win eventually. Furthermore, he promises to help from behind the scenes so that the party members will adore her. Excited by the support, the girl promises with a flushed face that she will do her best in the race. Do-jun thinks the dream is a problem, but the fact that everyone knows he applied is another. Even if the chairman made the documents disappear and silenced him, that wouldn't be the end of it. In an auditorium, a man on stage asks for a round of applause for those who worked on the event. The protagonist and others applaud as he recalls that the debate was confirmed a month ago. Since it was an old project and a current city issue, he didn't feel anything strange at the time. Someone then shouts that today is an important day, so everyone needs to move quickly. A colleague asks the director, who is in charge of the art convention center today. A young man from the Gangzhou-gu regional committee raises his hand and says he's responsible. Right after, another man from the Gangdong-gu committee introduces himself to help with everything. The director warns that 100 people will be coming to debate, so everyone needs to pay close attention. If everything happens as it did in the dream, he'll have to congratulate director Oh Dong-sik for setting this up. This is a large-scale event that will last for the 3 days of the candidate registration period. He assumes that if the dream comes true, the officials will leave and his documents will disappear too. The young man wonders what kind of plan this is, where they use someone else's power to harm him. At that moment, Heinsu asks if the documents are ready, and Do-jun confirms he's about to turn them in. Holding the yellow envelope, he feels a strong sense of déjà vu, as if the nightmare is becoming a reality. Then the protagonist heads to the registration table for the youth chairman candidates. There, a man greets him and asks if he's there to register for the election. The official introduces himself as a member of the Gangdong-gu regional committee in Seoul. Do-jun also introduces himself and then asks what that man's role is there. He replies that he's just a member of the youth committee and that Chairman Baek used to work in Gangdong-gu. Baek was vice chairman for 7 years but lost the election and was practically exiled to Anyang. After confirming the papers, the young man from the committee places everything inside the yellow envelope. Do-jun then thanks him and cleverly asks for a receipt to prove he registered his documents. The official becomes visibly nervous and says he didn't hear anything about issuing receipts. The protagonist notices his nervousness, but the man promises to issue the receipt during the afternoon. Before leaving, Do-jun discreetly leaves his phone recording on top of the table. He then turns and starts to walk away from the registration table with a suspicious look. From a distance, the young man watches the area with a serious and determined look on his face. In another moment, we see Song Haijin arriving at the office and greeting everyone with a smile. Someone watches her from afar and wonders if that girl isn't a little too annoying. A colleague accuses him of staring at the young woman, and he admits she's pretty but their political views are different. He explains that he wants state support for youth employment, and it seems Haijin thinks the same way. Stuttering, the young man insists that the details are different, and at that moment the public debate begins. On stage, Chairman Baek Youngsik poses for the cameras with an air of superiority and confidence. The photographers can't stop taking pictures, as a political debate is also a big spectacle. With the microphone in hand, the man says this is a long-held wish for the city and is attracting a lot of attention. He continues explaining that the accumulated efforts here will eventually yield concrete results. Haijin then approaches Do-jun and asks for his opinion on the whole matter. The young man turns and asks if she wants to know if he thinks the subway line will actually get built. With a smile, the young woman comments on his formality and asks if he's always so serious. He replies yes and no, and she deduces that he's only formal with people he's not very close to. The girl then suggests that maybe can become closer after the election is over. Do-jun looks at her and asks if she's implying they'll become friends after the contest. Laughing, she confirms that's exactly what she meant with her previous comment. The protagonist thinks that will be difficult, and Haijin questions why, since he's friends with everyone. With a challenging smile, she asks if he's going to push her away just because she lost to him. The young man then says seriously that she doesn't seem to understand how politics works very well. The candidate is surprised by his statement and stares at him, not understanding what he meant by that. He explains that in politics, people can be friends and enemies at any moment, depending on the situation. But with a dark look, the young man concludes that politicians never forget who tried to take them down. The young woman then questions him about the accusation of malice while he remembers a political deal. With a sarcastic smile, she asks if he's that afraid of her and then denies everything. The young man just says she'll find out later and that unfortunately, there's nothing to be done. After that, the two candidates stand in silence amidst the crowd, watching the debate. Meanwhile, in a room in the back of the venue, a door slowly closes in the darkness. Inside the room with a paper shredder, someone repeats the phrase spoken by Do Jun. We then see that it's director Oh Dong-sik who, with a wicked smile, destroys the young man's application. Right after committing the act, the director leaves the room and locks the door to leave no trace. The room is left empty and silent, with the protagonist's envelope completely destroyed. But what he doesn't know is that a hidden camera managed to record his entire action. The next day, a newspaper publishes an article about the promising future the party is planning. With that, the 3-day debates end successfully, and the party receives praise online. To celebrate, the team gathers at a bar and toasts to the hard work of the past few days. Everyone is happy and commenting that the sleepless nights were finally worth it. The protagonist thanks everyone, but his colleagues insist that he was the one who worked the hardest. Sitting with his back to them, he drinks his beer while anxiously thinking about the next day. And the next day, an official announcement confirms Song Hae-jin as the sole candidate for the election. Reading the result, Heinsu is completely shocked and can't believe what he's seeing. A crowd forms in front of the notice board, everyone surprised by the unexpected news. A man then asks what happened to Do Jun, because he definitely turned in the papers. Desperate with the result, Heinsu yells for his friend, not understanding anything. But Do Jun remains calm and, with a serious look, replies that he already knew everything. One of the bosses then asks where the documents are, as he saw the yellow envelope. Very angry, the man slams his hand on the table, unable to believe the situation. He tells everyone to calm down, and an employee explains that they looked everywhere. A female colleague then gets upset and shouts that she saw the protagonist's hand in the papers days ago. The superior loses his patience and yells back that the documents have simply vanished. The young man suggests that maybe the external team didn't store the papers correctly. The boss concludes that if there are no documents, then the young man never actually turned them in. Hyensu is outraged by the accusation, and the man says he'll call the other team. Everyone is filled with hope as he starts to call the Gangdong district. But the protagonist watches everything with a cold look, as he already knows how this story ends. On the call, he asks Mr. Hainuk if he remembers Kang Dojin's registration. The other man replies that he was very busy and barely remembers the documents he handled. He even says that if it's not in his memory, then it means it didn't happen. Before hanging up, the protagonist interrupts him and asks him to listen to a little something. The boss is surprised by the young man's request, but his curiosity gets the better of him. Then Do-jun plays a recording of the conversation he had with the person responsible for the registration. The audio confirms that he handed in the paperwork and even asked for a receipt as proof. With this, Heinsu celebrates and says the recording is proof that the papers were received. The superior is in shock as he listens to the audio from the recording while the phone continues to play. With his face sweating, he then asks where the young man's application form went. Do-jun thinks with a smile that the man would have no idea the papers went into the shredder. On the phone, the employee takes full blame and accepts any punishment that comes from the party. The protagonist is surprised to see the man give himself up so easily without even a fight. The boss then thinks that the punishment won't be too severe, since it's just a youth election. To end the confusion, he sends everyone home, saying the office will handle it. A colleague says that with the recording, everything will be resolved, and they should get back to work. But the young man explains that the man will claim it was a mistake, and it will all end with a verbal warning. On the stairs, they run into Song Hae-jin and exchange somewhat awkward greetings. The protagonist stares at her with a serious and suspicious look after everything that happened. The young woman then asks for a minute to talk with him about the election situation. Outside, she asks if he already knew something like this was going to happen. The girl remembers he said a politician can't be friends with someone who tried to step on them. With a worried face, Hae-jin asks if that was what he was talking about that day. The young man is silent for a moment, just observing his rival's reaction. He then swears it wasn't him, so there are no misunderstandings, and the young man seems sincere. The young woman gets annoyed and says she won't stay quiet if this was done on purpose by someone. She continues, saying she has never lived her life that way and isn't about to start now. Hae-jin asks if he's laughing at her, and with a smile on his face, Do-jun says yes. He says she doesn't understand politics because she got in through a recommendation, not on her own merit. The young man questions her about her values, and if she has any idea what she's really doing. He asks if she thinks she's there just by her own will, and the young woman is left speechless. Then the protagonist dismisses her, saying he's busy and they'll talk another time. With that, he leaves her alone in the alley without any further explanation of what happened. The girl is left behind with a flushed face and eyes full of tears from what she heard. Elsewhere, someone knocks on the door of the district committee chairman's office. Upon entering the room, Do-jun is surprised by the people he finds inside. Chairman Baek Young-sik and Director Oh Dong-sik are sitting and having coffee. The director then says he'll step out for a moment so the young man can talk alone. Dong-sik gets up and leaves the protagonist alone in the room with the powerful chairman. Baek Young-sik stares at him with a serious look and wonders what Kang Dojin intends to do. The chairman invites him to sit and says he heard about the unfair treatment he received. He comments that in politics, one must be careful not to lose their head over these things. With a smile, the man says the first lesson is to never forget your place. Already seated, Do-jun gets straight to the point and asks what will happen to him now. The chairman acknowledges the registration, but without the papers, the situation is very complicated. So, he offers him the position of chairman of the student committee instead of the youth committee. The young man is silent, thinking they want him to deal with kids who barely understand politics. Baek says this is an opportunity for his name to be noticed by the party's top brass. The protagonist then places his phone on the table and asks the chairman to take a good look. At this, Baek Young-sik is shocked to see the recording of the paper shredder in action. In the video, Director Oh Dong-sik appears locking the door, and then the shredded paper comes out of the machine. The chairman stammers, not knowing what to say, and the young man states that his application was destroyed on purpose. He then demands that the director be reported to the ethics committee, or the video will be released to everyone. The young man adds that people will think the order to destroy everything came from the chairman himself. Baek asks if he needs to go that far, but Do-jun won't stay quiet after what they tried to do. With a trembling hand, the man looks defeated and asks if that's all the young man wants. For the good of everyone, he says Song Hae-jin can be the youth chairman and asks what Do-jun wants. With a victorious smile on his face, the protagonist prepares to make his checkmate move. Since the director will be dismissed, he asks to take the vacant position of office director. The chairman furiously asks if Do-jun has lost his mind after hearing the request, but the young man calmly replies that his mind has never been clearer. Shocked, the older man yells that a 26-year-old secretary is just unacceptable. Do-jun then explains that the party's bylaws give the regional chairman authority to appoint staff. He continues, saying there's no age limit, and if the chairman trusts someone, he can pick them for the job. At this, Baek Young-sik lets out a very forced and somewhat sinister laugh. Next, the older man glances at an ashtray sitting on the table in front of him. In a swift, angry motion, he grabs the object with all his might. And without a second thought, the chairman hurls the ashtray right at him. Even after that, the man insists the executive secretary position is out of the question. Baek then thinks he'd rather have been slapped than hear such an absurd demand. Do-jun reflects that if he had asked for the chairman's car, he would have handed it over, no problem. Annoyed, the older man suggests he ask for the vice chairman position instead. He repeats that the secretary spot isn't happening, and the scene shifts to the city at night. It's soon explained that the executive secretary is the one who controls the regional committee's money. Without funding, you can't launch projects, mobilize the organization, or even run an election, since all the funds and manpower for every event go through the executive office. The chairman thinks his position is more intimate than a wife. He can't just give it to anyone. Do-jun takes his phone back, saying he'll go ahead and release the video and recording. Desperate, the man shouts no and lunges for the phone to stop him. But Do-jun catches his wrist and in a firm voice orders the man to sit down immediately. Back in his chair, the older man asks if Do-jun truly gets what this job entails. The young man confirms he knows very well, as it's the key to winning the next election. Defeated, the chairman buries his face in his hands, unsure of what to do. The man just sits there paralyzed, with a look of pure frustration and rage. In that moment, he wonders if he should just get rid of the kid right then and there. Meanwhile, Do-jun simply watches him with a calm, confident smile. The older man then explains they need to be in perfect sync for anything to work. Do-jun says he's known for being sharp and has an excellent reputation around town. Baek then warns that he doesn't forgive betrayal, and it's easy to make an orphan with no connections disappear. With a smirk, the protagonist assures him that won't happen, saying he knows his place. The chairman dismisses him, and Do-jun thanks him, adding he'll wait for an update by the end of the day. Alone in the room, the older man slumps onto the sofa, looking completely exhausted and beaten. His hand trembles with rage as he grips his pants, a clear sign of his frustration. He then flings the ashtray lid at the door with immense force and lets out a curse. Staring at the broken object on the floor, he blames a man named Song Ju-chan for everything. After a weary sigh, Baek grabs his phone and calls the director, asking him to return to the office. Oh Dong-sik then re-enters the room, looking a little tense about what's coming. His eyes are immediately drawn to the shattered ashtray on the floor, making the mood even heavier. Hesitantly, the director asks what happened during his talk with Kang Do-jun. The chairman explains that the kid brought a video, and the director looks confused. Baek then reveals it's a video of him feeding the young man's application into the paper shredder. Furious, the boss yells at him for getting caught, and the man stammers, trying to explain himself. The older man continues, saying the kid will leak everything if they don't give him what he wants. He then drops the bomb. Do-jun wants the director gone from his post as executive secretary. Desperate, the director falls to his knees, pleading with the chairman not to do this. He begs for forgiveness, saying he's always been loyal, and the boss sighs, claiming he wanted to save him. But the chairman asks if he really thinks he can take the kid down, and the director says nothing. He explains the threat of going public if the director isn't reported to the ethics committee. Baek then holds up 4 fingers and says the words 4 years very seriously. The director is floored, begging not to be cast aside like this after so much time. The boss then reconsiders, holding up 2 fingers and telling him to take a break for exactly 2 years. The man reflects that 2 years in politics is basically an eternity. But Baek promises to handle everything and bring him back to his post after that time is up. Elsewhere, we see an apartment building as evening settles over the city. Inside, Song Hae-jin is looking at something with a thoughtful expression. On the table before her is a document that seems to be very important. It's the official announcement declaring her the sole candidate and winner of the committee election. The girl seems conflicted, wondering if this is really how she's being elected. With that thought, she sits on the couch, looking quite sad and disappointed by the outcome. Hae-jin thinks that Dong-sik being reported to the ethics committee is incredibly strange. She recalls them saying he destroyed the documents on purpose and wonders if it was a setup. With the paper in hand, the young woman covers her face, frustrated and ashamed as she thinks of her father. She imagines he either paid off the director or convinced the chairman to help her win. But the girl gets angry because she never asked them to do anything like that for her. Still, she decides she must at least apologize to Do-jun for what transpired. So, the young woman picks up her phone and tries calling him to talk things over. The call doesn't connect, however, and she can't get a hold of him at that moment. The next day at the office, she finally runs into him and greets him a bit awkwardly. Seeing him chatting with someone else, she calls his name to get his attention. Immediately, she starts apologizing, saying she had no idea the director would do such a thing. She turns away from him, admitting she feels like she's done something terribly wrong. Do-jun tells her it's fine, but she still feels awful about becoming the only candidate. He then reassures her, saying it wasn't her plan, so she shouldn't worry about it. He congratulates her on the position and reveals he's the new executive secretary, and they'll be working together. The girl is stunned by the news, and he confirms an official announcement is coming soon. The protagonist extends his hand, proposing they do their best to have a good working relationship. Haejun realizes this is why he's so calm. She's now in a position beneath him. So, the young woman shakes his hand, accepting the offer to collaborate on the committee's future. With a smile, the new committee president says she looks forward to working with him. Do-jun watches her with a serious expression as she calls him Mr. Executive Secretary. The next day, his alarm goes off at 6 a.m., and he shuts it off to start his day. At home, the young man gets ready for his morning workout routine to stay fit. Already dressed, he heads out for a run in a park, enjoying the crisp morning air. While jogging, he appears deep in thought, his expression concentrated. Suddenly, Haejun shows up at the same park and greets him with a cheerful, "Good morning." He's surprised and asks what she's doing out so early. The girl says with a smile that she wanted to learn from the man, who's becoming the general secretary. She adds that she also wanted to follow his lead, being very direct about her intentions. Do-jun warns her it won't be easy to keep up, but she insists she's quite athletic. He makes it clear he doesn't plan on slowing his pace to match hers. With that, she asks if he can answer a question, but he bluntly says no. As they run, she presses him, and he explains that a politician can't be cold to everyone all the time. Haejun then suggests that perhaps they should join forces once he officially takes office. With a challenging smirk, the young man tells her to prove she's worth allying with. At that moment, he picks up his pace, starting to run much faster than her. The young woman shouts for him to wait and tries to chase after him, not wanting to be left behind. But she quickly gets winded, impressed by the gap he's already created between them. Though exhausted and sweating, the young woman seems determined to keep pushing herself. She then decides she'll finish the run, but at her own unhurried pace. Hours later, Secretary Oh Dong-sik's resignation was made official during a committee meeting. The Ethics Committee deemed the act of shredding documents a very serious incident. Bak announces the committee will honor the decision, and that Dong-sik will step down voluntarily. Despite the chairman's mild tone, the atmosphere in the room remained incredibly tense. One of the colleagues thinks it's poetic justice, as everyone there saw this coming. Immediately after the announcement, Dong-sik hurries out of the room, and Bak prepares for another declaration. The chairman then names Kan Do-jun as the successor to the general secretary position. At the news, everyone in the room rises and congratulates the new secretary on the major achievement. Haejun thinks things are going to be tough, since he made it obvious he doesn't like her one bit. The young woman regrets her morning run as her body aches, while the boss announces the new appointments. Do-jun bows in gratitude and vows to take full responsibility for his new role. A faint smile on his face, the young man shows his confidence as he steps into this new position of power. Haejun applauds with the others, but her expression remains worried about what's to come. Later that night, the scene shifts to the entrance of a restaurant in Anyang. The owner greets him with immense enthusiasm, saying it's an honor to host the general secretary. Do-jun tells him not to make a fuss, but the man insists that hierarchy must be respected. We see it's Hansu who calls him Hayoung, and the protagonist orders the usual for them. His friend remarks that even the restaurant sounds different, knowing it's a special day. Hansu then grabs a bottle and pours a celebratory drink for the new general secretary. Right after, the owner himself downs a glass to celebrate his friend's success. The two friends toast, joyfully celebrating the protagonist's new position at the restaurant. Hansu lets out a mischievous chuckle, clearly thrilled about his colleague's victory. The protagonist just offers a subtle smile, savoring the moment. At that, his friend asks how he struck a deal with the chairman and how he found out about the betrayal. The young man explains he had a strange feeling ever since the rumors about Haejun started. Hansu complains he should have said something, but Do-jun replies it was just a hunch, nothing certain. He then reveals he sent his friend to get a camera, and that's how they caught the director in the act. His colleague realizes that's how he secured the deal to replace Oh Dong-sik. But Do-jun confesses that being the youth committee president would have been far more dangerous. He explains that position holds no real power, and no one would trust someone who knows their secrets. His friend gets it, he went straight for the secretary role to keep the chairman on a tight leash. The young man adds that the boss can't stand him, because without his approval he can't spend money or mobilize anyone. Hansu grows concerned, asking if his friend isn't scared of making such a powerful enemy. But Do-jun replies that if he was going to tiptoe around in fear, he never would have started any of this. His colleague is taken aback by the statement, and Do-jun says he'll just keep doing what he's always done. He notes that the chairman can't fire him without a valid reason, so he won't try anything direct. He concludes the boss's next move is obvious, he'll try to use his connections. Bak will find someone powerful to pressure him into resigning, or he'll wait for him to slip up. Hansu vows to check everything to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes in the new role. But Do-jun explains the boss won't just wait for a mistake, he'll create one. His friend is speechless, asking what they should do to guard against a setup. Do-jun reveals that starting tomorrow, they're going to clean up the party's membership list and update it all. They'll categorize the database by interests and occupations, logging every single detail. Additionally, the new secretary will publish a weekly report covering the budget and schedules. With a determined gaze, the young man says he'll share it with every member and city councilor. His friend understands the plan, realizing this will keep the chairman from pulling any shady moves. Elsewhere, Oh Dong-sik is packing up his office, looking utterly dejected. He picks up a picture frame showing his daughter smiling for the camera. A memory surfaces of someone handing him an envelope as a present for the girl. Back in the present, the former director slams his fist on the desk, overcome with anger and frustration. With a trembling hand, the ex-director clutches his glasses and whispers the chairman's name. Next, he grabs a resignation letter that was on his desk. With a vengeful glare, he swears to himself he won't let it end like this. The scene then cuts to the regional committee building on a calm, sunny morning. The clock on the wall signals the start of business hours. The office is still deserted with all desks and computers powered down. Do-jun turns and greets his friend Hyunsu, who has just arrived for the first day of the new era. His colleague hands over the organized member data, just as he had asked. Hyunsu asks how he's feeling so good after a night of drinking, and Do-jun thanks him for his help with the file. The friend says he had to be ready, and Do-jun suggests they grab coffee to plan the report. He reflects that Baek and Dong-sik are just waiting for him to make a single misstep. That's why he knows that playing defense and staying quiet would only give his enemies an opening. Looking over the data, the new secretary notes the organization is a mess full of dead contacts. Hyunsu complains that sorting everything by gender and occupation is going to be a massive job. Do-jun says he'll call in some young members who are good with Excel to work overtime. He claims if he asks for a favor, they'll come running, and adds that the database will be vital for the elections. The core of any election is organization, and whoever controls it can never be overlooked in politics. This way, they not only have control, but also get a rate on local public opinion. Excited by the strategy, Hyunsu agrees and asks how they should format the new committee report. With a cunning smile, Do-jun replies that a weekly report seems like the best approach. He lists the contents like issue summaries and budgets, and then considers the audience. He decides to distribute the report to 30 or 40 key figures for maximum efficiency. His friend summarizes the plan. The report goes out by email every Monday, with a few printed copies. Do-jun explains that Baek will hate it at first, but soon he won't be able to run meetings without that data. Once he becomes indispensable to everyone, no one will be able to push him around so easily. Just then, a coworker arrives and gives him a cheerful, "Good morning." The woman seems surprised, commenting that the new office manager isn't bright and early. The young man greets her back with a smile, asking her not to be so formal with him now. The woman, Yoo Hae-won, says it feels weird treating him like a junior after his promotion. She then teases that he's always been an early riser and asks what he's working on so intently. He explains he's updating the party membership list, since the old one is out of date. With a smile, his colleague remarks that he's already giving off new office manager vibes. She thinks that while updating the list is his job, doing it on day one is highly unusual. In her mind, she pictures people gossiping about how long he'll actually last in the new role. The woman wonders what a kid like him, however hardworking, really knows about politics. A flashback shows his journey from a simple assistant to a man in a sharp suit. Yoo Hae-won then invites the two guys for coffee, and Do-jun immediately accepts. She thinks this is the perfect chance to butter him up and get on the new boss's good side. But the new secretary flashes a knowing smile. He likely already knows exactly what she's thinking. The scene then shifts to Hanwon University Hospital, a massive and impressive building. Inside, we see the hospital's VIP wing, a lavish area for important patients. Sitting in an armchair, Chairman Baek Young-sik waits for someone with a serious look. A man enters and the chairman greets him, saying it's been far too long. The chairman gestures for him to sit and asks if he's here about Miss Song Hae-jin. The man Lee Tae-song smiles and confirms that as her uncle he can't help but worry. Baek replies that he understands, adding he told the president he couldn't manage it all alone. The older man thinks it was a relief Do-jun got the job, since Hae-jin would have been no match for him. He reflects that even with the foundation's backing, taking down someone like that kid is a different story. Tae-seung says Hae-jin is just starting her career there, and he'd originally wanted her to be a lawyer. The chairman agrees, saying they just hope she grows to become an asset for the family. The director then asks the chairman to look after his niece, and Baek seems slightly hesitant. Just then the girl's uncle places a fancy envelope on the table as a gift. The chairman eyes the envelope, a bead of sweat on his brow, and asks what it is. Tae-seung explains it's a fully paid anonymous membership to a golf club. The older man starts to decline but quickly changes his tune and accepts the gift. The director then tells him to consider it a promise between two powerful men. If he helps Hae-jin succeed, the foundation will back his run for congressman or mayor. With a strained laugh, the chairman gets the message loud and clear and accepts the proposal. Tae-seung bids him farewell, saying he won't take up any more of a busy man's time. He then gives a bow and leaves, letting the chairman alone with his thoughts. Alone, the chairman thinks the director is one sly old fox for trying to pull a fast one on him. Phone in hand, he laments being outsmarted by a rookie and losing his right-hand man. At that moment, his niece Hae-jin calls, and he seems slightly annoyed. Her uncle says he already heard the news, and she wonders why he doesn't sound surprised. He tells her he just met with the chairman to ask him to take good care of her. The man invites his niece for lunch, even offering her an allowance to persuade her. He thinks the girl is sharp like her mother. He can't just leave her in a powerless position. With a dark expression, he wonders just what kind of guy managed to threaten the chairman. Elsewhere, a man in red gloves cleans a fish tank with a hose. He seems to be working at a fish market, tending to the aquatic life. A mysterious man approaches from behind, a sinister smile on his face. Holding a bag, he offers the fish market worker a job in a very suspicious way. Meanwhile, at a bar, a group of men are drinking and complaining about the protagonist. One of them grumbles that he's arrogant and treated him poorly despite everything. Another man wonders if it's Oh Dong-sik again, remembering the chairman told him to lay low. Cigarette in hand, he questions how he's supposed to wait 2 years while that kid thrives. He wonders if the chairman will really turn him in, and if he can just let that happen. The former director then tells his men to dig up some dirt on Kang Do-jun. One of the goons starts searching at a PC cave for anything that could be used against him. He's on the Inyang City Party members' bulletin board to start his search. Fingers poised over the keyboard, he gets ready to post a slanderous message about the new secretary. The post accuses the protagonist of taking money from a local real estate developer. A flashback shows the post's author with the protagonist at a bar 3 years prior. He claims Do-jun took him to an entertainment district to meet someone. The protagonist at the time wonders what loser is making this story up. Back in the present, a hand clamps down on the shoulder of the man typing at the computer. Suddenly, Do-jun jolts awake in his bed, startled by another strange nightmare. With a hand to his forehead, he wonders if it was just another dream or something real. Sitting up, he reflects that since his last dream came true, he can't ignore this one. He regrets not seeing the face of the man in the hat, but he knows the smear campaign is coming. Face in his hands, he figures that since they found no real dirt, they invented a corruption story. Even if it's proven false, being labeled a hypocrite will ruin everything he's built. The protagonist takes a deep breath, realizing this is a vicious tactic from his enemies. He knows he can't tell anyone about his dreams, but he can use them to set a trap. Looking out the window, the young man decides to start his day a bit earlier than usual. When he gets to the office, his friend Heinsu greets him, commenting on how radiant he looks. The young man jokes that he's glowing because he already worked out and hit the sauna. With a smile, Do-jun tells him they should start reviewing yesterday's database work. His colleague seems hesitant and starts to say something but then trails off. The other employees watch them, finding the new boss's smile a little unsettling. Heinsu then says he'll organize the summary and bring it over, and the protagonist just nods. Soon after, the new secretary picks up his phone, his expression turning serious. He then makes an important call, setting his new counter plan into motion. Meanwhile, at the April committee, Haijin greets everyone with a friendly smile. One of her colleagues welcomes her cheerfully and asks if she needs a hand with anything. With her phone ready, the young woman starts calling party members to introduce herself. She figures she's already reached all the young male members, so it's time for the next person on her list. The girl heads toward the office manager's room to speak with the new boss. She thinks greeting him first will make her appear fair and impartial to everyone. But since she also needs to discuss the budget, she knocks, and Do-jun tells her to come in. The new president wishes him a good morning, and he politely returns the gesture. He remarks that he could hear her greeting people from inside his office. The young woman gets a little flustered and stands silently before the new general secretary. He then asks how things are going, but she's not quite sure what he's getting at. The young man clarifies he's asking if she's settling in okay, adding that he finds his own job interesting. Haijin comments that it must be his calling, and he asks if it isn't hers as well. Do-jun says he's determined to make it his calling and asks why she seems so guarded. He brings up the other day's event, noting the chairman gave her some very solid backing. The young woman replies that she can't just refuse a kindness, even though she'd rather do things on her own. She reflects that being the chairman's subordinate highlights her lack of experience and connections. He then asks if what she really wants is the independence to act on her own terms. The young woman explains that while she wants independence, she's not a quitter, which is why she's making these introductions. He understands. She then asks what he's working on, and he tells her it's the report. The secretary explains it's a weekly report and that she'll receive her copy tomorrow. The youth committee president is taken aback by his initiative and is at a loss for words. She thinks he's not going to stop there, which makes it harder to bring up a request. With some hesitation, the girl steels herself to ask the new secretary for what she wants. The young woman then proposes creating a job forum for the youth of Anyang City. He seems surprised by the idea, and she repeats her desire to hold a job forum for young people. The secretary says it sounds like a good event, and she agrees with a relieved smile. But he quickly points out that an event of that size costs a lot and requires a huge venue. He continues, adding that it would need a ton of manpower and publicity to work. The girl gets a bit tense hearing the challenges but says it would be amazing if it succeeded. The young man then asks if she thinks it will truly benefit the party or just be a wasted effort. He reminds her that these forums are often just for photo ops and self-promotion. The youth committee president bows her head and quietly says she's aware of that. He tells her that spending so much to promote her right now wouldn't really help the party. The young woman stands to leave, regretting she ever brought it up and calling herself an idiot. But the secretary stops her, suggesting she try something else instead of giving up. The girl pauses at the door, looking back at him, curious about his new proposal. He says her goal is to grab the attention of both members and residents in Anyang. With a confident smile, he reveals he has a campaign that she could lead. He suggests a campaign to shut down harmful businesses located near the city schools. The young woman asks if he wants her to lead the charge, and he says yes, with his full support. He promises dozens of volunteers from the party, and the girl is stunned by the number. The president pictures herself surrounded by a crowd of supporters for her new political campaign. At this, the young woman bows deeply, grateful for the incredible opportunity. Determined, she says she understands the plan and will start preparing for the campaign right away. As the girl leaves, Hansu watches from the doorway, completely baffled by what just happened. Her friend walks into the office and asks the protagonist what that was all about. The secretary explains the job forum was too costly and asks why she left so happy. He tells him he suggested she lead a campaign against problematic facilities near schools. Do-jun then asks if his friend has forgotten who Chairman Baek is tied to. Hansu is stunned. He realizes Do-jun is using Haijin to go after their boss. With a triumphant smile, the scene cuts to early the next morning. That morning, an email lands in the inboxes of 40 key figures in the party and council. On the screen is the new executive secretary's weekly report. Unlike the usual brief notices, this report is over 20 pages long, filled with stats and charts. An older man reads the document, impressed by the detailed breakdown of the budget and volunteers. A woman in another office reviews the report, noting the list of requests for cooperation. With a satisfied smile, she thinks she's never seen such a well-organized and systematic report. Some colleagues remark that with weekly updates like these, preparing for meetings will be much easier. Others whisper that things were a chaotic mess under the old director, but now everything's different. Just then, Haijin arrives at the office, and one of the guys greets her with a hello. He asks if she's seen the report, and she confirms she has, calling it impressive. The girl is holding a copy of the document, looking very surprised by its contents. Sitting at her desk, she sees that the campaign she mentioned yesterday is already included. She thinks that with the party's official support, moving forward will be much easier. But she also realizes that ultimately Kang Do-jun is the one driving everything. She decides she'll be in the spotlight either way, so it's a win-win situation. On someone's desk, the executive secretary's detailed report stands out. In his office, Chairman Baek looks furious, demanding to know why everyone is praising the report. An older man tells him not to be so negative, calling the young man a real asset to the party. Vice Chairman Sim Hong-soo remarks that Do-jun is ambitious and acts like he's gearing up for something big. Baek bristles at the comment, but the other man just laughs, saying he's glad to see the party thriving. The boss states his goal is to be the next mayor, that he sees no issue with a talented subordinate shining. His colleague then advises him to let go of the past, reminding him that Oh Dong-sik is gone. The chairman is silent for a moment, his expression serious and thoughtful. Looking out the window, he confesses the former director is like a brother to him, and he's worried. The vice chairman says he understands, but it'll be tough for him to make a comeback with Do-jun in power. The vice chairman adds that since he appointed him, it's hard for him to interfere now. He warns that if these reports keep coming, the council members will start relying on them. With that, the boss realizes the kid doesn't want to make an enemy with unknown potential. Annoyed, the chairman declares he's tired and heading to the sauna, leaving the vice in charge of the meeting. He then slams the door on his way out, leaving his colleague to handle things. Alone, the vice chairman picks up one of the new secretary's reports to look it over. A confident smile spreads across his face. He seemed pleased with Do-jun's work. The regional committee's weekly meeting went smoothly, even without the chairman. As the executive secretary in charge of funds was present, there were no hiccups. One woman at the meeting announces she will approve the funding for infertile couples. Heinsu is in the office organizing paperwork, looking a bit swamped. Haijun approaches him, asking for tips on running the campaign and organizing the committee. Her friend thinks she has no idea she's turning on Baek, which explains her enthusiasm. With a smile, the secretary confirms he will help her, and Heinsu is shocked by his response. He then lays out the entire plan, covering protests, publicity, and even banner designs. His colleague's jaw drops, thinking it's a good thing the chairman isn't around to see this. The young woman thanks him profusely, promising to treat him to a meal to celebrate when he's free. Watching the scene unfold, Heinsu gets a strange sense of déjà vu. He approaches his friend, saying he never wants to be his enemy and hopes he won't be betrayed down the line. The secretary explains she's not foolish, she has resources and could have done it all herself. He continues, saying to truly fight someone, you have to get them in the ring to see who they really are. Heinsu is confused and asks what he means by the fighting analogy. Do-jun explains that if she prepares lightly, she'll fold at the first sign of trouble. But if she prepares intensely, her true character will show through during the fight. His friend understands he wants to test her political mindset. He wants to know if she's the type to back down or the type to keep fighting, even after taking a hit. This will also reveal how serious the foundation is about her and how Baek views her. Heinsu asks what he'll do once he figures out what kind of person she really is. With a mysterious smile, the protagonist says he'll simply know what kind of person she is. He then changes the subject, asking his friend why young people are so in MBTI. The young man goes on, saying people trade information to figure out who they're dealing with. Heinsu gets he needs to know her political type to figure out how to handle her. The protagonist says they'll just have to wait and see how she reacts when Chairman Baek loses his temper. The next day, the boss storms into the office, yelling for Sung Hae-jin. He spends the morning searching for her, but no one in the office knows where she is. Do-jun thinks that wandering around will just lead to an awkward run-in and misunderstandings. He knows he'll be implicated once Hae-jin says the idea was his, but he decides to wait it out in his office. Sitting at his desk, he figures he can at least get some work done in peace. Suddenly, his office door flies open and his friend rushes in. Heinsu desperately yells that they're in big trouble, but the secretary seems unfazed. His colleague explains someone on the bulletin board posted about him and the girl from the orphanage. Heinsu is stunned, asking how his friend knew they'd accuse him of messing with her. But the protagonist just tells him to ignore it and not worry about the post. With a confident smile, he says the former director is probably lurking somewhere nearby. The bulletin board post begins by stating how painful it is for the author to write it. It continues, saying he can no longer stay silent with a guilty conscience. One of the coworkers reads that he used to visit the orphanage during his time on the student committee. The post alleges he went there to engage in inappropriate behavior with the female students. The woman is appalled by the accusation and can't believe the young man would do such a thing. The secretary explains that since they provided dates and locations, people will feel compelled to believe it. Staff members in the office begin to gossip, questioning the new boss's character. Just then, Vice Chairman Sim Hong-soo enters and asks if everyone has seen the post. In Chairman Baek's office, the man sits with a serious, focused expression. A malicious smile plays on his lips. He seems to be enjoying the chaos. Heinsu approaches his friend, asking if this is Oh Dong-sik's doing. But Do-jun reveals he set the bait, and they're taking it just as he planned. His friend asks if he has anyone specific in mind who might have posted it for the ex-director. With his eyes closed, the protagonist says the name Kim Hyung-jong in a grave tone. He recalls that this guy was kicked out of the committee for striking a girl named Soo Yan. Hansu is horrified by the memory and wonders if he was the one behind the post. The young man tells his friend to take some members and check the security footage from local PC cafes. Heinsu says that people who worked with him on the student committee won't believe the accusations. But the protagonist explains that with enough time and pressure, everyone will start to believe the lie. He then gets ready to leave, saying people can't talk behind his back if he's right there. Do-jun tells him if anyone asks, he went to investigate the truth behind the post. Heinsu is left alone in the office, wondering if his friend ever gets angry. Outside the office, a colleague waits for him, addressing him by his new title. The woman asks if he doesn't think an explanation is needed after that post. The young man stares her down and asks coldly if she honestly thinks he did it. The woman is left speechless and lowers her head in shame. A black and white image shows a man forcefully grabbing a girl's arm. The colleague then says she couldn't say either way, looking nervous. The young man just tells her to do her job and he'll do his. He then turns and walks off, leaving the woman standing in the hallway. Elsewhere, the protagonist is on the phone, confirming it's him on the line. Phone in hand, he says it's just he suspected and that he's counting on the person on the other end. He then tosses his phone onto a car's dashboard, seeming to wait for something. Lying in the back seat, the young man decides he'll contact someone named BM soon. Closing his eyes, he thinks maybe he should catch a quick nap while he waits. Elsewhere, Kim Hyung-jung gets a call and his boss congratulates him on a job well done. The man on the phone sounds worried, saying they should have double-checked things. The boss retorts there's nothing to check, it's a fact the kid visited the orphanage. He says they just added a little spice to the story, and no one can prove otherwise. Furious, the man on the other end yells, asking how the protagonist could possibly disprove it. The henchman gets the point and says he'll see him on the day of the national audit to settle up. Hanging up, the former director sits in silence, a dark look on his face. Late that afternoon, an emergency meeting is called to discuss the post. In the meeting room, one of the men slams the table, yelling that they need to report it. The chairman urges calm, saying they must be cautious with such a serious claim. But another man reminds him that during the interview he said Do-jun was no ordinary smart kid. The protagonist says he isn't sure but asks Hyun-soo to check security cameras. His friend promises he will, adding that no one who worked with him believes the claim. But Do-jun explains that, given time, people will have no choice but to believe the lie. He then gets ready to leave, saying people can't insult him if he's physically present. The secretary says to tell everyone he went to investigate and that he'll call with another task. Hyun-soo watches his friend go, wondering if anything ever gets to him. Suddenly, a female colleague approaches, addressing him by his new title. She asks if he saw the post, saying the committee needs an explanation. With a serious look, the young man asks back if she really thinks he did it. The woman is at a loss for words, lowering her head in shame. A black and white image shows a man aggressively gripping a girl's wrist. Angrily, the colleague says she can't tell if the accusation is true or false. The protagonist then tells her to just focus on her work, and he'll focus on his. He turns and leaves, leaving the woman standing frozen in the office. Elsewhere, the young man makes a call, confirming the person on the other end is who he thought. He says he's counting on her help, appearing to set his plan in motion. On a couch in an apartment, the protagonist's phone rests on a cushion. The young man lies down, saying he'll contact someone named BM soon. Closing his eyes, he decides to take a quick nap to escape the chaos. In a cafe, a man answers a call and is told to lay low for a while. The man on the phone says there's nothing to verify, as it's a known fact he visited the orphanage. He continues, saying they just embellished the story and no one can prove otherwise. The ex-director shouts in the phone, asking how the kid could possibly disprove their claim. The other man agrees and says he'll see him on the day of the national audit. With a dark expression, the ex-director hangs up, brooding over the plan. Late that afternoon, an emergency meeting was called over the incident. In the meeting room, one member yells they need to report this to the ethics committee. But the chairman says he understands the sentiment but urges caution. One of the women grows irritated, saying they need to act quickly and decisively in a moment like this. The chairman then reflects that the young man is smart and he made him general secretary for a reason. The chairman says he understands everyone's feelings and that he will make a decision on the matter. He then announces that General Secretary Kang Do-jun's duties are temporarily suspended. But just then, a voice interrupts, asking for permission to enter. The chairman recognizes the voice, surprised to see who's at the door. Hyun-soo enters, accompanied by an older woman with a red scarf and gray hair. The woman introduces herself as Yang Sun-jae, the director of the Western Orphanage in Anyang. She says she came because she heard Mr. Kang Do-jun was being unfairly accused. The director states with absolute certainty that the story about an incident with a child is false. Hearing this, one of the women at the meeting breaks into a cold sweat. With her hand on the table, she looks nervous about this unexpected twist. The chairman asks if she has any proof to back up her claim of his innocence. The boss, who is just celebrating a win, now finds himself in a very tight spot. He knew the secretary was a thorn in his side, but this was becoming a much bigger problem. The opportunity had fallen right into his lap, and while he knew Dong-sik was behind it, it all backfired. The director then presents a folder full of documents, saying this is the proof he wanted. One of the colleagues asks what it is, and the woman begins to explain. She reveals the young man is a long-time sponsor of the orphanage, showing all the records. The folder contains volunteer logs, photos, and even thank you letters from the children. The director explains he took part in a group tutoring session with other volunteers. She asserts he always followed the rules and was never alone with any of the children. One of the women in the room gasps, realizing the whole thing was a setup. The director continues, saying she asked every child, and they all denied any incident occurred. The chairman is speechless, a look of shock and defeat washing over his face. At that exact moment, a party member bursts in, yelling that they found something. Hyun-soo turns with a grin, excitedly asking if they really got him. The man confirms he was at a PC cafe just as the secretary had predicted. They checked the security footage and saw he was logged in when the post went up. In a flashback, we see the guy from the fish market claiming he knows nothing. He was acting tough, but his face went pale when Oh Dong-sik's name was brought up. A party member reports that the man ran off, and they've alerted the police. Hyun-soo thinks to himself that he knew he was avoiding the spotlight for a reason. The protagonist smiles, knowing the guilt these people feel will soon become his leverage. At a meeting, the chairman announces that Secretary Kang Do-jun's innocence has been proven. He reveals that party member Kim Hyung-dong was apprehended and confessed he was acting on orders. The vice chairman approaches the young man, addressing him as General Secretary Kang Do-jun. He apologizes for not being more helpful during the difficult ordeal. But the protagonist says he's just glad the kids at the orphanage are getting some positive attention. The older man laughs, praising the young man for thinking of the children in a time like this. He puts a hand on Do Jun's shoulder, saying having a talent like him is a blessing for the party. The secretary replies he did what anyone in his shoes would have done. The vice chairman is quiet for a second, then says he's truly impressive. News of the young man's humble response spreads quickly through the party members. Elsewhere, ex-director Oh Dong-sik is at a payphone, desperately pleading for help. He calls Chairman Baek, begging him for a way out of this mess. But the boss tells him to never call this number again, stating their connection is severed. The ex-director then calls someone else, saying he hesitated to abandon him, which is why he acted. He claims he decided to be loyal to the end, but the person on the other end seems unmoved. The man on the phone says what he did was unforgivable, and he'll have to face the music. The ex-director curses him, saying one day the same thing will happen to him, that karma is coming. The man then hangs up, leaving the former secretary fuming with rage and frustration. Just then, Chairman Baek gets a text message and reads it carefully. The message says Kim Hung-dong confessed everything and that the ex-director orchestrated the whole thing. A wicked smile spreads across the chairman's face as he laughs at his former subordinate's downfall. At a bus stop, the ex-director is sitting alone when two men approach him. They ask if he is Mr. Oh Dong-sik and tell him he needs to come with them. The scene then cuts to a golf course in Huizong City on a sunny day. A man is golfing when he gets a call and complains about his bad luck. Another player walks over, asking if something urgent came up to interrupt the game. The man is Lee Jin-cheol, a party advisor who appears to be quite influential. He says it's nothing, just complaining about people who enjoy being a nuisance. Advisor Lee Jin-cheol takes a perfect swing, and the golf ball soars down the fairway. Shielding his eyes, he watches the ball's path with an expression of pure confidence. One of the other players compliments his great shot, and he smiles pleased. Meanwhile, another man named Bae Jin, who gets his golf bag ready, he mentions hearing there was some trouble in the advisor's district a while back. The man says there was an unfortunate incident, but they discovered a talented young man because of it. He promises to introduce the kid to the advisor sometime, but the man seems uninterested. Lee Jin-cheol mutters, wondering if it's that troublemaker Oh Dong-sik acting up again. Just then, he gets a call from Chairman Kim Joo-chan and answers, looking confused. The chairman is yelling, asking how Bae could do this after everything they've done. He's furious about the campaign to shut down the unsavory businesses, saying it will ruin them. Chairman Bae tells him to calm down, claiming he knows nothing about it and asking what happened. His eyes widen as he wonders if Song Hae-jin is behind this, and he becomes enraged. Through clenched teeth, he says he'll look into it and call back, but the other man won't let it go. Chairman Kim says there are banners all over the city, and if he doesn't fix this, they're finished. Holding his phone, Baek looks panicked, unsure what to do. Bae Jin-woo walks over with a sarcastic smile, asking if something's wrong. The boss apologizes, saying something urgent came up and he has to leave. He excuses himself, saying they can play another round some other time to make up for it. The two men watch him go, and Bae remarks that the chairman sure makes a lot of mistakes. The advisor agrees but says the fact he became chairman proves he has powerful backers. He then scolds Bae for his loose tongue, talking badly about the boss in front of others. With a smile, Bae admits he's not a big fan of the chairman, which piques the other man's curiosity. The advisor asks why he dislikes Bae staring at him intently. Bae explains he doesn't like people with too many weaknesses, as it makes things hard for their subordinates. He then reveals that his guess about the advisor disliking him was just a hunch. With a smile, the advisor changes the subject, inviting the other man to continue their game. The two men head back to the golf course to finish their match. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, we see 5 nightlife establishments near a school. Young people are protesting in the street, holding banners and signs against these places. One protester says the streets are littered with obscene flyers that are hard to look at. Holding a microphone, Hae-jin asks what the children must think when they see those flyers. Surrounded by supporters and the press, she shouts that these harmful facilities must be removed. Just then, a party member approaches her, addressing her as president. He says Chairman Baek wants to see her at the office immediately about an urgent matter. In his office, the boss slams the table angrily, demanding to know what in the world she thinks she's doing. Furious, he asks who gave her permission to run this campaign. The young woman replies she included the schedule in the meeting agenda, asking if he didn't review it. The chairman thinks he had planned to discuss this with her over drinks, but now he's just enraged. He then yells at her to shut down the campaign and never pull a stunt like this again. The girl is shocked by his reaction, thinking he should have objected sooner. With her hands clasped behind her back, she says she can't do that, as she already has a meeting scheduled with a reporter. She asks for a reason, but the chairman just shouts that if he says no, the answer is no. With a threatening glare, he reminds her he's the one who put her in this position, and she'd better not forget it. The president is frozen, a look of fear and uncertainty on her face as she's unsure what to do. Alone in a park, she wonders what her next move should be after that confrontation. With her phone in hand, she decides to call her uncle for advice. On the phone, she pleads for help, and her uncle asks what's wrong. The young woman explains the campaign situation and how the chairman treated her like a subordinate, ordering her to stop. She complains that he threatened her political career if she didn't obey, which infuriated her. Her uncle tells her to calm down and asks if this campaign is really necessary right now. The girl explains she has a reporter meeting scheduled and can't just back out now. She's at a loss, a look of desperation and fear on her face as she talks. Her uncle then tells her to go forward with it, because what she's doing is just and right. He reassures her the campaign is good for their image and tells her not to worry. With a relieved smile, the young woman thanks her uncle for his support and guidance. Back at the office, Hunsu remarks that everything played out exactly as his friend predicted. He says that now Song Hae-jin will never be Chairman Baek's right-hand woman. Dejun replies that sometimes a good fight can make people grow even closer. Heinsu scoffs, doubting that will happen, but his friend seems confident in his plan. The secretary says he knows the chairman well, but he still doesn't have a read on the girl or her foundation. Holding a microphone, someone thanks everyone for coming out to the event today. It's Hae-jin announcing the official launch of a campaign to remove harmful facilities. Her uncle had advised her not to be nervous and to act with confidence, as it's good for their image. With a confident smile, the young woman asks for everyone's active participation. A long line of people forms to sign the petition and support the president's cause. The young woman directs people where to sign, looking thrilled with the event's success. A man in glasses approaches her, asking if she is the youth committee president. He introduces himself as Jiang Jae, a reporter from the Juryo Daily for their scheduled interview. The scene then cuts to the entrance of a restaurant where the interview will take place. The reporter starts recording their conversation on his phone to capture every detail. He admits he thought it was just a publicity stunt, but he can see the public response is massive. The young woman explains that the proximity of these places to schools is a serious, overlooked issue. She reveals her research shows 5 out of every 10 schools have such establishments nearby. The president assures him this isn't an emotional plea for votes, but a serious policy approach. With a satisfied smile, the reporter seems impressed by her seriousness and preparation. He then asks what kind of change she hopes to achieve with her campaign. The girl replies the goal is to ban these establishments within 200 meters of schools. The reporter praises her systematic approach and asks if the campaign was organized by bait. The young woman pauses for a moment, thinking of how to answer the sensitive question. She then says she's running the campaign independently, with the party's backing. The journalist asks if there's any internal opposition to the campaign, and she looks a bit nervous. With a forced smile, the young woman says no, claiming she has the party's full and unrestricted support. The reporter thanks her for her time, saying the article will run in tomorrow's paper. The youth committee president smiles, looking pleased with how the interview went. The two then shake hands and part ways, concluding the meeting professionally. In his office, Chairman Baek looks frustrated, and the vice chairman asks why he doesn't just shut it down. The boss reveals it's because of the Cheongsong Medical Foundation, which is backing the campaign. He doesn't know how to handle it and can't risk the secretary finding out about his business deals. The vice then suggests that instead of stopping the campaign, they should show the party support for it. The secretary says they need to see how things play out before making a move. The vice chairman offers to meet with Kim Joo-chan on the boss's behalf to smooth things over. Chairman Baek thinks if he's offering to get his hands dirty, why should he refuse? He tells the vice he'll be in his debt and accepts his offer of help. With a satisfied smile, the vice chairman just watches the boss with a confident gaze. The older man then asks if the secretary really thinks he doesn't know what's going on. The protagonist asks why he assumes he's doing this to back the chairman into a corner. The vice explains that if the old director were still around, this campaign would have been quashed. With an ironic smile, the young man asks if he's implying he put the girl up to this. The vice replies that a rookie like her wouldn't know how to organize a protest this big. The secretary is silent for a moment, neither confirming nor denying the man's accusation. With a mysterious smile, he just watches the vice chairman with a calm, serene expression. The older man says he doesn't want a talent like him wasting energy on petty squabbles. With a smile, the young man replies it's not a waste, and the vice doesn't understand what he means. The secretary reveals he plans to win the next local election, no matter what. He says he's different from the others, he doesn't make empty promises and will win, period. The protagonist explains that spending energy is how you build muscle and improve stamina. He continues, saying sometimes you have to clear out the bad elements to make room for the good. The young man says if the vice truly cares about the party and the chairman, he should trust him. He points to a map explaining that if they stick to the old ways, they'll never win. The vice then asks if he's suggesting they force Chairman Baek out of his position. The secretary denies it, saying he'll do his best to support anyone capable of beating the rival party. With a determined look, he asserts that no matter who that person is, he'll back them. The vice chairman is shocked, breaking into a cold sweat at the young secretary's audacity. With a smile, he assures him he will do his best to help the party secure a victory. The secretary reassures him, saying politics often takes unexpected turns. The scene then shifts to a street at night, a lone streetlight illuminating the darkness. The protagonist is walking through an alley when he suddenly stops, feeling a strange presence. He turns to see a black car parked in the middle of the street, its headlights off, looking suspicious. A voice from inside the car asks if he's Kang Do-jun and invites him for a chat. The man in the car introduces himself as Lee Tae-seong, the youth committee president's uncle. He insists he's not here for some shady deal, but just for a conversation. The girl's uncle suggests they grab a bite to eat or a drink to talk. The protagonist just watches him silently, a serious and wary look on his face. With that, the young man approaches the car door, looking like he's about to get in. But he tells the man that if he wants to talk, he should come through the committee's front door. With an ironic smirk, the secretary says he's clearly watched too many movies and is being glitchy yet. The uncle seems slightly annoyed by the response, but keeps his cool. One of the men opens the car door for the protagonist, as if expecting him. The secretary gets into the vehicle and settles in the back seat for their talk. The car then drives away, leaving another man standing alone on the street, watching it go. With a sarcastic smile, the protagonist thinks to himself that this feels like a proposal without a ring.